On the first day of class, it's important to be prepared. Do you have your syllabus ready to be handed out? Do they have their textbooks online? And are the students in the right class? And now we can be even more prepared. Prepared for a possible transition from a traditional in-person classroom to a not so traditional in-person and online classroom. So on the first day of class, there's some questions that you should consider. Where should your students sit? And what groups are they going to be in, if you do group projects? And do your students have access to Zoom and Canvas? All right, class, look around. Make sure this is where you want to sit, because this is where you're going to be for the rest of the semester. That way, we'll be able to make sure if somebody gets a positive COVID result, we know who has close contact. Also, Luke, Gio, you're close together, so we'll have you be group partners throughout the rest of the semester. Again, this will help reduce exposure. By the raise of hands, who has access and knowledge to using Zoom? Great. Making sure that they have both knowledge and access to the programs before they actually need it is really smart, because when quarantines happen, there's not much time to set up. So let's make this as smooth of a transition as possible. Every classroom should have a computer and a camera and maybe even a microphone. If you're not sure how to set it up, get a hold of ITS. They're more than happy to make sure that you know how to use them. Okay, class, next week we're going to meet on Zoom using the Zoom emergency meeting that I set up on Canvas. If you're already on campus and you have nowhere to go, you're welcome to use our classroom. Just make sure you use headphones. Have a test run Zoom meeting with your class. What a simple way just to make sure that outside of the classroom, they have access and they know how to get to Zoom through Canvas. I recommend setting up an emergency Zoom meeting scheduled for every class day that you have. Super simple, and what a great way just to be ready in case a student needs to be quarantined. They can transition super smoothly in your classroom. Make sure that you set very clear rules for when the students are allowed to get on Zoom. For my class, I require that they contact me before class begins and give me legitimate reasons, like a quarantine or possible exposure. If you don't set these rules, students are going to take advantage, and soon they're going to want to get on Zoom because they just rolled out of bed. Now you're teaching both online and in person. Are you ready? Is your equipment set up? Is your camera at a good angle? How about screen share? Are you going to use that? Do you know how to use it? And what about the audio? Does it work on both ends? Hey, Luke, welcome to class. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. Gio, say hello to Luke so we make sure he can hear you.
Hi, Luke.
Oh, hi, Gio.
It's great that he can hear the class. Otherwise, you as the teacher, you'll have to mindfully repeat questions and comments to make sure the class is all included. It's important that even those online can get that information and that they feel like a part of the group. I recommend setting up a communication standard for your online students. What do I mean by that? Well, what if they have a question or a comment? What do? Well, Zoom has this hand-raising signal that if they click it, a hand pops up, which is pretty great, right? But what if I don't notice that hand? What do I do then? What do they do? Well, I gave my students permission to go ahead and unmute and politely interrupt if they have a question.
Professor Martinez, I have a question.
If you're worried about constant interruptions or possible lag time, I recommend maybe instead setting up a consistent classroom schedule. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, maybe the last 10 minutes of class, you offer a Q&A time, especially for those online. Give them the chance to ask those questions or clear up any confusion that they had during your lecture. Inclusion is important. These online students paid the same and they're required the same work. So let's give them the same quality education. So for instance, if you're handing out papers in your classroom, what are you going to do for your online students? Well, send it to them digitally before class begins so everyone has what they need at the same time. Make it a habit to stop and double check on your students. Don't forget there are 3 important elements in a speech. Your attention grabber, clearly stating your topic, and forecasting what it is that you're going to say. All right, let's stop here. Any questions in class? What about you, Luke? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm okay, thanks.
Great. I know we all can get really into our lectures, and we may possibly forget that there's students online. So here's a fun little tip. Maybe putting a picture of your student or their names right underneath the camera, just to remind you there's somebody there and they want to be a part of the group. As a public speaking teacher, we do a lot of presentations in my class, and there's a pretty good chance I'm going to have a student that will have to present through Zoom. Knowing that, I have to adapt the expectations I have for my students online so that they can still fulfill the requirements. Do you do presentations, group projects, or some type of student involvement? If so, make sure you adapt as well. Of course, your students will need to know basic Zoom etiquette when they go online. And there's no better time to do that than at the beginning of the semester when you do your test run Zoom meeting. Set your rules then. Cameras on or off. If your camera's going to be on, can you see them well? How's their lighting? What about digital backgrounds? Are those distracting? Or how about a live background? Is there something behind them that's maybe a little inappropriate? How about audio, on or off? I'm not going to tell you how to set up your classroom. Instead, I'm going to encourage you to figure out what works best for your teaching style and then have clear expectations for your students. Luke, you need to be on mute unless you're asking questions or making comments, because that background's quite noisy.
Sorry.
Thank you. You know what? Could you turn that light off as well? It's really difficult to see you well. Oh, much better. And Gio, you got to put that digital background down. It's a little too distracting and inappropriate. Perfect, thank you. And yes, keep your face centered in the screen so I can see all of you. Thank you. If you're unsure how to use Canvas and Zoom, the Teaching and Learning Center is wonderful, and they will help make sure that your blended online and in-person classroom runs smoothly. This type of teaching isn't easy, and it's definitely not ideal, but we can learn from Charles Darwin when he said, "It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." So, good luck and have a safe and successful semester.